So, to cover off at the time the statement of intent was submitted to the council.
I'm over here, my little.
The ATEED's, the first principles review that ATEED was asked to complete by the Mayor was sort of drawing to a close. So it did note in its cover letter that it was anticipating further changes to the SOI, and we understand that they could be reasonably substantial. The strategic direction, their new strategic direction, they will be talking through with you on the 8th of May at a workshop between their board and the governing body. So there will be, that will be clearer from that date. But generally, I think, so the comments that we gave were with that in mind, and some things that we did want to comment on were that they needed to be clear on what actual activities were being reprioritised with the change in focus. At the moment, it looked as if their work programme was not that dissimilar from what was existing previously. And they also needed to look at activities which would give effect to the higher priority on Māori. And lastly, they've proposed two new composite measures for their statement of intent, and there needs to be quite a bit more work done to understand, to kind of unpick those and understand whether they are actually going to be fit for purpose, because they kind of wrap up several measures into one, and it's hard as you as councillors might find it difficult to actually understand how they're performing on specific aspects. So those are the comments.
Okay, ATEED, reasonably okay, folks? All good, right?
No, I'll have one. You know that discussion we had with the museum today about transport? One of ATEED's stated objectives is to provide good placemaking and integrate transport, public transport. I don't know what the words are, it's in here somewhere. To integrate economic outcomes into place-based and transport initiatives delivered across the council group. What role would they have in sorting out that? Any or none? Because that seems to me it puts them right in the middle of it.
Through the chair, I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Claire Gomez. I've just joined the team. I think in the Destination Auckland strategy that ATEED have come and talked to councillors about, they kind of indicate in that they have a role in advocating the importance of these sort of assets and the fact, that tourism can play in that and how it can generate wealth building. So it's very much in that kind of advocacy and trying to work with council, the wider group, to support those outcomes.
Oh, good. Well, can you take that back to them then? Because I think there's a key role here. Because we have the museum saying, we do what we do. We've got the Domain Committee doing what they do, the local board doing what they do. And it needs somebody to sort it.
Yeah, the museums were actually consulted as part of the Destination Auckland strategy that Claire referred to, so I'm sure they raised that issue, and I think between ATEED, Auckland Transport and the museums, I'm sure we can get some kind of progress. And I think as the museum actually mentioned, Auckland Museum mentioned, there is already some discussions going on about a new bus route that would go closer to the museum. Sorry, what was that?
Not to Newmarket.
From Newmarket and running closer to the museum, is my understanding.
I'm talking about here. This is the central city that has a bus going out to Mota and a bus going out to the zoo. Why not a bus going out to the museum? It makes sense. That's all. Stop.
It goes to New Lynn and Avondale, etc. It goes to New Lynn and Avondale, etc. and Glen Eden.
It's not just.
No, it doesn't matter.
But there's a new tram coming, light rail, to Point Shed.
Through the Domain? I don't think so.
Within 10 years.
Through the zoo?
Yep, past the zoo, past and link up with the Northwestern Motorway. We have no other speakers on ATEED. I'm looking around, no. Right, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. We'll move on to RFA.
Thank you, Chair. So, Regional Facilities Auckland. Broadly, then our advice on the shareholder comments for the statement of intent are that it needs to reflect the long-term plan decisions on capital investment. So the letter of expectations sort of sent a message that They needed to anticipate a reasonably business as usual kind of environment, and that just needs to be made clear in both the wording and in the financials in the final SOI. There needs to be an explicit reference to commit to seeking direction from the council on strategic policy and investments, and that's kind of early engagement with staff and obviously with elected members as well. One quite key measure or quite key comment for RFA is that they need to disaggregate their reporting into its separate business units. And in the paper we've gone into a little bit of explanation about why, and that's principally so that there can be more of an understanding for you as elected members about how, to inform future decisions about investment. There's quite a substantial sum proposed for the art gallery through the long-term plan. And that needs to be disaggregated. I just know that there is a process going on through the finance team that they are working on a sort of standardised system for that. So there is some work underway already. And lastly, RFA needs to ensure that the targets for non-council revenue are achievable. So obviously that includes revenue from its assets. Yep. So yeah. And the last point, sorry, I said that was the last, but it was the second to last. So the RFA should work with the council in finalising the statement of intent to reflect the relevant council policies and strategies. So, for example, Toi Whātiki. The Auckland plan doesn't have, there's been a bit of discussion about how it reflects arts and culture, but, there are other strategies and policies that are important and the statement of intent should reflect those. So that's the comment on RFA, and we're happy to take questions.
Whilst I know what Councillor Walker's going to talk about, probably I wouldn't say that we agreed that they were to disaggregate it entirely. It was to disaggregate where possible the business units. It wasn't to make it bang, bang, bang so we can compare. I mean, there is a little bit of commercial sensitivity there in some of their activities, so I think that should be taken into account. Councillor Walker?
Just following on from your lead, Mr. Chair, and just want to endorse the comments that you make in 26 around accountability for separate business units. I would just make the suggestion, and again through you, Mr. Chair, that there are some further reasons for disaggregation, and that especially goes to the investment on the part of Aucklanders, and that might be by way of philanthropy, by way of volunteer hours, and by way of other resources that are effectively private-public partnerships that go into a number of these institutions that are quite distinct, and the art gallery comes to mind there. The other comment that I would make, Mr. Chair, is that the stadiums are individually distinct units. Each one of them generates data in terms of its performance that it supplies to RFA, their separate business units, cost and revenue centres. So it's not difficult for RFA to be more transparent around those venues as well. And again, those venues may also attract more volunteerism, more partnership with the community, and obviously there's a significant amount of ownership across the Auckland region around those venues, some of which are institutions. And I would make a request of RFA, and that is that it provides its updated stadium strategy, which it has made reference to in some documentation that I've had recently, but I still haven't seen it. We know that the previous stadium strategy, where the Warriors were going to go to the Wolves at Mount Smart for a variety of reasons, has not happened. Of course, they're proposing to cast Speedway to the Wolves and are applying similar arguments around that didn't stack up for the Warriors, who I would note have had a remarkable change in circumstances recently, which is great.
Finally, early in the season.
I don't think they're necessarily intending to throw Speedway to the wolves, Councillor Walker. We need to be...
Well, in terms of an institution that's been in its present location since the 1920s, which location was put in place by the Motions family with the guarantee of tenure for Speedway, I would suggest it is casting it to the wolves.
Actually, you're quite correct. I think it would be good for us to actually see the income and expenditure of all of the stadiums, including Western Springs.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just like to reiterate what Sarah said, that the finance staff are developing a standardised model for reporting. I'm sure that when they do that, they'll make sure that they take account of your point around commercial sensitivity, and will be encouraging RFA to report down as much detail as possible. As you know, there's a bit of a history to this request. It's come through a couple of years in a row. I think if we are unable to get RFA to produce that kind of information, then we've always got the option of modifying their statement of intent later in the year.
Excellent to have your support and leadership, Mr. Chair.
We just need to find that balance, Councillor Walker, as you know. Councillor Darby and then Councillor Casey.
Thank you. On the LOE that went out, there was there were 3 priority areas from recollection. One of them was no significant changes to stadium until the future of Eden Park and a national stadium proposal is clearer. How did RFA respond to that? Because I know at the time I raised some concern about the wording of national stadium, because I'm not aware of a national stadium proposal from any party. How did they respond to that? Does that tie into your feedback on page 118? I think it's 118, letters of expectation for RFA. You emphasise, or maybe still have some concern about their words, which are on page 283 of the agenda under Auckland Stadiums, where they're focusing on strategic investment in stadiums, which is, I think, is reasonable, but you're still flagging a concern about that. Can you just expand on that concern? I'm struggling to see why we'd have concern about them committing to strategic investment using capital that has been assigned to them through budgets, nothing other than the budgeted capital, that it meets their strategic plans. What is the problem with strategic investment?
Through the Chair. I think the concern there is that the references to strategic investment could be read. Sorry, I'll go back a sec. If that is referring only to things that have been allocated currently, that's fine. If it refers to or tries to create room for projects that go beyond what's already planned at this time, this is just a reminder to work closely with the council on what the plans should be going forward.
Okay, is that different to, say, Auckland Transport, Mr. Chair, where there's various parts of the organisation are always doing pre-feasibility, those very early indicative business cases, thinking about working up ideas. I mean, we don't want to curtail that sort of feasibility work, would we?
No, we don't, but we do want RFA to work closely with the council on ideas that they might have that might arise, say, from the stadium strategy. And that ties in with the other comment about committing to seeking direction from council on strategic policy and investments, because there isn't a strong sense from this draft statement of intent that there is that kind of commitment to working closely with us to make sure that all the moving parts, not just the things that are within the current RFA portfolio, but that might sit outside it, that all those moving parts will be aligned, because there are a number of different things going on around the city.
Okay, thank you.
But as a follow-up to Councillor Darby's point there about them working up other work, I mean, we have set them up to be the expert in the fields, meaning the CCO. So, to a degree, they should be coming back and giving us advice on the direction we may want to be heading in.
Yes, I think that's right, Councillor. We definitely do want them to come back with us to us with advice on those things. But when, as I said to Councillor Darby, I think the issue is that they need to come back with advice that takes account of things going on around the whole city and not just within their own portfolio. And I think has been one of the issues with the venue development strategy, is that it needs to encompass all the different moving parts in the stadium's scene in Auckland.
Councillor Newman?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of find myself on the same page as Councillor Darby, to be honest. I think the statement of intent is very skinny, but I guess we'll get some more information about the OPEX and CAPEX later. Chair, I just wondered through you, and I'm not sure if Matthew Walker could advise the timing of any advice that we're going to get in relation to our loan arrangements with Eden Park.
Matthew can answer. Yep. Well, we're basically waiting for D-Day. Yep, Matthew.
So through the chair, I mean, we've had things to think through around our position in Eden Park for a while, and we're still thinking them through. We've got a guarantor position there, and we're thinking about what a solution looks like. I think we've been open with this table for some time that the Eden Park operation in its current form can't, self-fund in a sustainable way. So I think that's been shared, that's open. It's been a problem for a while, it remains a problem. Our position as guarantor of that loan, I think, means that we've got an opportunity to resolve that. It clearly does play into wider questions around stadia for the city. Timing-wise, which I think, Councillor, was your specific question, I think we may make a little bit of headway on that issue in the next couple of months. If not, it would be pretty soon in the new financial year is the expectation I'd set at the moment.
Mr. Chairman, can you just decode that for me? I didn't understand what you said, Matthew. What are you talking about?
Wait a minute. We're just...
What's headway?
Basically, I think really it's the loan that's going to come to fruition from the ASB. So I think that's really what Matthew's referring to. I'm going to let Councillor Newman keep asking his questions, and you're next, Councillor Casey.
Yeah, look, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matthew, for that information, because when that advice comes back, if I have an inkling as to what the advice could be, you'll certainly have my support around that. But I mean, that's very, very important there will be a consequential adjustment, I suspect, in relation to that whole Auckland Stadium's work program. So the timing of that advice is very relevant to where the stadium's remark sits in the context of the SOI. So I would like to have a little bit more knowledge of the work and the discussion around Eden Park, noting that you want to finalise a recommendation around that, because I think that will inevitably require an adjustment to the strategic priorities in the 3-year work plan for RFA.
And that certainly is the case, but an important thing is that there is no proposal in our proposal, our LTP proposal, for money to be going towards either Eden Park or a new national stadium. So
I don't think
let's be quite, so yes, it will come in and affect the way it's all been run, because RFA may end up running Eden Park as part of the stable, but
I don't think there's ever been a proposal for money to go to Eden Park, well, not that I'm aware of, but there's certainly, if there's no proposal for funding for Auckland stadiums, then to be honest, the reflection that we've had from RFA previously and what has been codified in this draft statement of intent seems to be largely theoretical, because there's no means to progress it.
there is money for stadiums, but not for either of those two stadiums, is what the point I'm making.
We're building Chinese walls.
Councillor sorry, Daniel, you finished? Any more questions? Councillor Casey, right.
I just need more explanation about what you're actually talking about. Are you waiting? What are you waiting for? Is it the government? If there's no money in our long-term plan, there's no money in our budgets for it. What is
Matthew, could you just explain the loan and how we guarantor and how that may come back to pass to us and what that then means for? It's quite open. We've talked about this before.
Yeah. So I think what I was trying to do in responding to Councillor Newman was say that we've shared the position that Council has around acting as a guarantor for the loan that the Trust have with ASB Bank. Either in the next 4 to 6 weeks we'll find a position and come forward with a recommendation in regards to our position on that loan facility, or if not, then the expectation I was setting is that I think we'll be here at this table early in the next financial year. And all we're reflecting on is a position that I think everyone understands, and it's been open and it's been discussed in this room for probably a year or two. Eden Park in its current form can't pay its way in terms of a long-term sustainable capital fund that can maintain Eden Park in the standard that people would want, and we need with them and probably other parties to address that. And that's sat there as an issue there for a while.
Do you mean the government?
Yeah, I imagine the government will be a part of that conversation as well. Yep.
Phew. My question relates to a funny paragraph that I read in this document here about RFA partnering up with organisations and governments overseas that support the achievement of RFA's objectives. Apart from trying to fly in a controversial wee elephant from Sri Lanka, what other
One elephant or two?
what other international partnerships would RFA need? I mean, the regional facilities for Auckland, right?
I don't know the answer to that, and you'd have to ask
It's
RFA
quite a
next time they come before the
It's on our
committee.
page 277, and I've never seen it before. So I'd be interested in getting that, Alistair, from whoever.
Sorry, what was the wording again?
It's on our page 277. It says, under the terms of RFA's deed of trust, the regional focus of the trust does not preclude RFA from carrying out activities outside of Auckland. To this end, RFA forms partnerships and relationships with other governments, communities, businesses and industry organisations in New Zealand and overseas. That's where they get support.
Other than importing elephants.
That's what I'm saying, apart from the elephant, what else?
They do...
it's all their concerts and shows.
Yeah, concerts and shows overseas would be the primary contact overseas, where they actively need to source these shows and concerts to attract them to Auckland. So it's not just elephants.
My other query, it's just the usual. RFA owns and manages regional facilities on behalf of the people of Auckland. They don't just own and manage them, full stop.
Noted.
All right. Okay, Councillor Watson.
Oh, no, just quickly, I mean, I just wanted to reinforce the message that the officers have made here with respect of the letter of expectations. I mean, that was really quite clear. From the Mayor, I expect RFA, blah, 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 should not take any specific actions towards implementing this being the stadium strategy. So that was quite clear. But in the interim, between that letter of expectation going out, or at the same time, RFA had actually commissioned or put out for tender architectural drawings to transform the stadium into a cricket oval. So, in my view anyway, if not anyone else's, that was an action. So I agree with the officers, that has to be made clear. That was, and would have presumably involved some financial resource as well. So I think all that's happening there is that until the issue's decided in the long-term plan, then that sort of action should not be occurring. And I think that's entirely reasonable.
Councillor Walker.
I just want to reinforce the point that Councillor Watson raised. I asked for the tender documentation and I obtained it, and I can confirm that the tender document does cover off the transformation of Western Springs into a cricket oval and will involve considerable cost. The button has not been pushed to actually spend the capital, but money is certainly being spent engaging in planning of some substance. And RFA is entering into what effectively amounts to a good faith relationship with people that are putting in these tenders. So I have some concern about that. The other matter, though, that also concerns me is the matter that has been raised around Eden Park, and I would hope that our council is negotiating aggressively with the government, because Eden Park is effectively a national stadium. It was and had a considerable amount of money spent on it for the Rugby World Cup. We know that. The government should effectively write that loan off and cover that and complete its part of the bargain. So I would hope that we are negotiating aggressively with the government around that. And I would note that with the CRL, and in particular the enhancement of rail in the vicinity, Eden Park will be better placed than ever to cater for sporting events like a future Rugby World Cup or some other such.
Through the Chair, if I could just address, I think, the one point around the work RFA that you mentioned, converting Western Springs into a cricket venue. I understand that work is no longer progressing. The discussions with RFA indicated that it was part of their business as usual renewals program, but they wanted to ensure that any work that they did do may not impact on the ability to convert it into a cricket ground in the future. Leaving aside my personal view that we've abdicated our moral obligation to get a test cricket venue in Auckland, I think all we're saying in this comment up
We
here...
have a test venue.
Don't get me started.
Anyway,
I think
I'm
all we're
quite happy to
saying...
get you started.
All we're saying here is that there is a bigger... there are other considerations in stadiums other than just what RFA has in their portfolio, i.e. Eden Park, and that yes, we would certainly want them to come to council with advice so that we can agree actually what is the position going forward, what do we want these stadiums to be, and so that the funding implications of that can be addressed. I think that's all we're trying to say in our comment here is let that be a discussion between RFA and you as the governors so that the position can be agreed and we can all get on and do it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in respect of these discussions, I would hope that ATEED is involved, because arguably ATEED has got expertise around events. RFA may well have a vested interest, and I'm mindful that advice that RFA has given us in the past has been very suspect.
so we're quite clear at Western Springs they are doing some urgent maintenance just to get the basic facilities up to a standard for whatever, because they are substandard at the moment. So we have Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, Alistair's already said it, but I just wanted to make it really clear, saying this is being live streamed. And when we're disparaging a CCO, so Don McKinnon sat here next to me and said categorically that they were doing renewals at some weeks ago, not very few short weeks ago, renewals on Western Springs. They were not going ahead and building a cricket stadium. So I think we have to be very careful when we effectively defame our CCOs, because it was very clear what they were doing. And the other issue I'm a little bit concerned about is saying that information that we get is suspect. Those sorts of pejorative statements aren't really welcome by me around the table. I don't think we should be talking about anybody like that, because at the time of the first stadium strategy cut several years ago, and it'd be good if people moved on from that, that was then and this is now. And we need to, and that was not, there was nothing suspect about it at the time. It was their strategy, and now it isn't. so, so I think we just need to, I'm just very concerned about the way we're painting the CCO. And especially when they're not here to answer.
Yeah, no one says it in front of them.
Yeah, Councillor Cooper, that's why I just reinforced, just like you did, that there was maintenance work being done. And,
exactly.
But, the stadium strategy and RFA seems to bring out raw emotions, and there are people over here and people there. And yeah. So, that's the way it is. Councillor Darby.
No, I think we've had enough on stadiums, thank you.
Stadiums, okay, all good. No, she doesn't. Councillor Casey, you don't want to open the wound again, do you? No?
I was going to ask a question.
Right. Councillor Simpson.
I was going to leave stadiums to one side, but I was going to ask the question, seeing it came up, we should talk to the government about this, that, the other. Officially, who is our government relations people? Is it the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor? Who do we task with talking to the
and
government?
senior staff.
Different delegations for different things.
Okay.
All right. We're almost there, folks. Auckland Council Investments Limited.
Thank you, Chair. So, Auckland ACAL's statement of intent, as it describes, reflects a sort of business as usual position. Obviously, I just note that there is a proposal to disestablish ACAL, and that will be made, that's been consulted on, will be made through the long-term plan. But our sort of comments on the statement of intent is that they should reflect the Auckland Plan 2050, and one priority in the letter of expectations that wasn't addressed is to describe how it will provide oversight of the port's impacts on council group's debt, because obviously that has an impact. So if there's any questions about that, we're happy to take them.
Right, folks, there shouldn't be any queries on this one, really.
Very good.
All good? Right, we're moving on. Non-substantive.
Non-substantive. So I'll touch off on Comet first, so Community Education Trust. So we have reviewed, this is not on the slideshow, but we've reviewed their statement of intent, and there is some feedback that Comet needs to first of all, align itself to the Auckland Plan 2050. But second is to describe in its statement of intent and to work with the council to do this, how it actually, how its work complements or aligns with what's going on within the council, within the operations division and the Southern Initiative. There are some activities that are kind of, potentially contributing to the sort of same outcomes and targeting the same audience. So we just want to make sure that that is not, there is no duplication, and they're kind of working together on that. So if there are any questions or comments on that, Community Education Trust, Comet.
Nope.
Okay. So the last two are the Contemporary Arts Foundation and the Mangere Mountain Education Trust. And what's it, sorry? Yeah, Alistair will talk to these.
These two CCOs are very much more local in their focus, and our advice to you is that the shareholder feedback should be very much guided by the local boards in these instances. We've provided copies of the draft statements of intent to the relevant local boards. We've met with the Mangere Otahu local board in relation to the Mangere Mountain Education Trust, and following up with CAF. What we're recommending here is that this committee delegate, I think me actually, to work with those local boards to finalise the shareholder feedback. There's our initial analysis of the statements of intent didn't bring anything significant to light.
Okay, any queries, folks? Nope. Right, well, we have a mover and a seconder. I'll just put up to make sure we're all okay. Councillor Darby, we've just changed B.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Right, so I'll put that. We're moving a second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Right, thank you. Right.